Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers, a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. My name is Callista, and this is
Gaia.
And today, we are finally back in Reno to record, first of all, because it's been fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And second of all, this episode is going to be dedicated to our time in the South, which was super fun. We were in South Carolina for a little bit. What was it, like a week or something?
Yeah, just over a week.
Yeah, just over a week. I guess to get down to business, we did our first guest spot ever, and that was super fun. Shout out to Spider.
Of Animated Canvas in Columbia, and there's a location in Lexington, South Carolina.
Yep. And it was nerve-wracking. It was super fun when we got there. I will say that. Hot take. I know that like a lot of tattoo artists are like, no, you should always take an opportunity guest spot. And if you're someone who doesn't enjoy packing, because I didn't think about this beforehand, but it's like literally double the packing. So there was that. And it is always awkward, or at least for me, like working in other people's spaces, especially since we haven't like done that. And like not only that, but like traveling with our equipment was also just like just a little bit nerve-wracking, just because it's like, okay, hopefully nothing explodes in our fucking container.
Yeah, we have to worry about our ink exploding because you have to travel with all of your ink.
Travel with all your inks, and then just like really over prepare basically. We like ran stencils beforehand.
I.e. you trying to take 2 whole boxes of gloves.
Yes, exactly. Because I was like, oh my, and it was funny because I only had one tattoo. But I did the whole like, what do they call it? Like, when you get worried about a lack of things.
Scarcity,
yeah. I had like some like really bad scarcity issues with that at least. And then, there was the paper towel thing.
Yeah, and I was like, we don't need a ton of paper towels. And to be fair, we did not have the room for the amount that
we
she
did
wanted.
not, no.
And then she starts her first tattoo, takes all of them, and then just throws them out. Because obviously once you've like pulled them out, you have to throw them out.
Yeah.
And so she was still like doing her actual tattoos like she's in our shop where there's like an excess of everything instead of like proper, like every tattoo artist knows this, like when you're doing a convention, you're like, okay, I'm gonna need 7 like patient wipes for this, so I'm only gonna pull out 7, and then you'll pull out 1 extra every time you need to go. And she's over here like, I need 82 of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. To be fair, you were like, no, we don't need to bring them, and then we had to buy them.
We had to buy them.
So don't come at me.
It's just the fact that you were like, let's pull everything.
Yeah, no, for sure.
For one tattoo,
It was like a whole shebang. Well, I was lucky too because like I was only pretty much booking black and gray pieces when I was down there, but you had color pieces because obviously you're a color tattoo artist, and she's well known down there for her color work, so like you had to bring like way more inks than I did.
Yeah, which took up a ton of space.
Yeah, which was fine.
All of our paper towel space.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like if I don't know if we'll ever do another guest spot, but if we do, I would like to do color, so then I would have to invest in my own little bag and then just pay for that checked bag, so that way we have enough room for both of our things, and that way we don't have to worry about each other's stuff, and I can take as many paper towels as I need. But with that being said, it was really fun just like being able to meet people. I do enjoy like making new tattoo artist friends. That was for sure worth it. Not a lot of people are gonna fly out from South Carolina to Reno to get tattooed, or at least for me, because like they don't know me there. I'm like a newcomer. Maybe for you, for sure.
Yeah, I've had a couple over the years, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to like the whole marketing strategy thing, I think for the most part, it really just filled my cup. Not with like clients, like it was awesome meeting you guys down there, of course, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it would make a huge impact in business in Reno for me at least. But I think my favorite part about guest spotting was for sure making new tattoo artist friends. Yeah, like that was my favorite part. It's just really nice to like meet nice people in the industry.
Well, and I think also, like, you got to see that cultural difference between, like, West Coast tattoo shops.
Yes.
And East Coast tattoo shops.
Oh, it's so different. And it's so funny because I don't think a lot of people would have thought about that, but it is so fucking different because everyone in the shop is, like, bantering and talking to each other while they're, doing their tattoos. But here in the West, it's like everyone's putting their head down and just doing the tattoo. It's like hardly, we don't, like, super interact. And with that being said too, like I think part of it has to do with the shop that we're at as well. We tend to be like more professional about things, but that also means we kind of lose that like banter and that like I don't know, funny, inappropriate like conversations that happen in like a tattoo shop in the South or like a regular, in air quotes, tattoo shop.
Well, I would say, because I mean, I worked at a couple shops out in Reno, and none of them had that.
Oh, okay.
None of them had the like obviously the artists are professional, like with their clients when their clients come in, but like the banter she's talking about happened before the studio opened when the artists are in there cleaning, and they're just talking shit and they're making like, they're just having fun playing. And that's something that like even out here, it's like one of the things I struggled with the most was that you don't have that level of play amongst artists. Like it's a very like rivalry, like I think with that professionalism, you lose the like fun of working in a tattoo shop. And I think that goes for like, it's just the culture here. People are a lot more guarded. It's that same thing where I'm like, a stranger's just a friend you haven't met yet. And you're like, a stranger's just someone that hasn't been mean to you yet.
Yeah. 100%.
And those cultural differences of like in the South, we're all in it together. So like if we're in the tattoo shop, no matter who's working, we're stoked someone's working. Whereas out west, it has been a lot more like cutthroat at shops where it was like, you can't give this piece to someone else. I'm like, but they're better for it than I am, or I don't want to do it. And they do.
Yeah, we did for sure talk about that, how a lot of it is that competitiveness. There is a lot of like, I don't know how else to like word it, but it's this culture in the West that like it's pretty much every man for himself, which makes sense because we were talking about the history of things, right? Like, I mean, we come from out West. It's like, you know, the gold rush where it like genuinely was like people moving their entire families, and then you had to worry about your family, and like that's it. It wasn't like super community based, especially like compared to the South where like random strangers say hi to each other and that's totally normal, which is also a culture shock for me because I'm like, they're saying hi to us, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's fucking crazy.
And she was getting catcalled and she's like, wait, what are they saying? I'm like, they're catcalling us. They're asking us if we're having a great day. They're like telling us that we look great. And she's like, oh my gosh, they're so nice.
Oh yeah, even being catcalled down in the South, and it must be the accent or something, or maybe I'm easily charmed, but like I've been catcalled out here.
You are fucking not easily charmed.
Yeah, I've been catcalled out here in the West, and I've just been like, you know, you should eat shit and die. But in the South, I was like, oh, that was like really kind. Like that, I don't know what it is. I think it's the intention too. Men in the South don't care if you don't reply to them, but here in the West, if you get catcalled and you ignore them, they call you bitch like 2 seconds afterwards.
No, it's just meant as like a compliment. That's it. Yeah. They're just complimenting. It's like that guy telling you that you were wearing your pants really well. And to be clear for everyone that gets offended by that, he just saw the front of her. He wasn't staring at her ass. He just appreciated her fucking giant quads.
Yeah.
And it was a very sweet, very wholesome, him just being like, you were wearing those pants real well.
And it was quick too. Like, obviously I'm not like endorsing catcalling, but it really just goes to show how different the culture is over there. Because again, oddly enough, I felt very safe in the South as well. It was just a safe, like a lot of the parts were like walkable too.
I did take you to the nicer areas.
Okay, cool.
That's part of the trick of traveling with people.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, why do you like Jacksonville, Florida? And I was like, oh, well, you guys really spoiled me because we were only there long enough to like really enjoy it. And then B, like you guys to take me to the nice places.
Yeah.
And that was nice. But I just feel like it was refreshing. It was also reaffirming to know that like the West isn't the place for me to be. Like I do want to move, and it was just incredibly reaffirming. And oddly enough, I just did not know that like I would like the South that much, but I really did. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Given we did go into a season where thankfully the bugs aren't like, you know, everywhere yet, and it wasn't too muggy. It was like warm for sure, but it was like nice.
Yeah, I think it was in the 80s when we were there. 70s and 80s. It was like perfect temperature. We got to go to the beach and walk around.
Oh, it was
You got to see a jellyfish getting eaten by a crab.
I know. I got to see 2 jellyfish. It was crazy. Yeah. And then and the beach, the men there are just jacked for no reason. I don't know if we went on a good day or what, but
we went to Folly Beach, so it's a college, like...
God damn, easy pickings. Like, everyone was just like, oh my gosh, like, attractive and, like, built and, like, buff as shit. And I was like, oh my God. And they're, the Country Strong boys are some of my favorite ones, too. Where it's like, they're fucking built, but, like, oh, they got, you know, nice layer fluff on them.
Yeah. And we were like walking, just having fun, people watching. And it's great because the women there are just standing around, just watching the men play.
I love it.
And I'm talking women, like 40s, 50s, just truly enjoying these like 20-year-old college kids.
The view.
Yeah, they're just enjoying the view.
Yeah.
And it's just a very, very different culture, because once again, when people are looking, like we got stopped in a Waffle House to talk about our tattoos, and people were staring, but it didn't feel like judgy at all.
No, it did not. It was more inquisitive than anything.
Yeah.
And like that's something else in the South that like I guess was a bit of a culture shock for me too, was being a very heavily tattooed person. Because we do stick out like sore thumbs.
Yeah.
Like I think typically we like kind of stick out in the Reno airport already, you know what I mean? But like in the South, it was very much like oh shit, they've got hella tattoos. And I literally got stopped multiple times just for people to be like, I love your tattoos. Like I love your aesthetic. That looks awesome. And that was cool too. And it hardly ever came from a bad place, which was nice. It was just very much inquisitive.
Yep.
I think that's one thing I like about the West more, though, is the more heavily tattooed people, because it is hard, like, just being a shy person, naturally, to have people, like, stop you and, like, look and then really stick out like a sore thumb. And, like, I want to look like this, obviously. I've always dreamed of being heavily tattooed. I'm not used to that part yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, because for me, that happens to us everywhere. Like, even when we go up to Portland, people stop us. Like, everywhere we've been, they were always, like, commenting on it. So, like, for me, that's something that, like we were just in San Francisco night before last. And it's the same thing. Like, we were walking around and everyone's commenting on, like, the way that we looked because we were out there with our friend Chloe. And, like, yeah. But, like, that to me is something that I'm just so used to. It's just the, like, judgy element, which I didn't feel that when we were there. No. That and, like, once again, the accents just help.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, a West Coast accent does nothing to, like, warm my soul.
No.
But, like, we went to a Gullah exhibit, and she started singing, and I was literally just crying because it just, like, felt, like, safe and, like, home.
Yeah, and that's one big thing about the South, too. I think that's, thank you for that, by the way, because it is, like, saturated with so much history. And we did a really good, like, it wasn't a ghost tour. They are very specific about saying that it's not a fucking ghost tour. But
it's a dark history of Charleston.
Dark history of Charleston. Which
Shout out to Bulldog Tours.
Yeah, y'all. We had the best.
Really good.
I think our tour guide was Randy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fucking Randy.
Best tour
Randy's
guide ever.
Amazing.
He was fucking phenomenal. And we learned a lot about the history. And obviously, when you're talking about history of the South, you cannot ignore slavery and all the horrible things that have happened. But it was just so, I don't know. I feel like it's important to go out and do those things. And we went to the market?
The Charleston City Market.
The Charleston City Market, which you had thought originally.
What I was told.
What you were told,
it used to be called the Charleston Slave Market, and I very much appreciate them changing the name. And I was told that's where slaves were sold. So I was like, fuck, dude, I don't want to go there. Like, it just seems really disrespectful.
Well, plus, I mean, it's lined with, like, people just selling stuff. It's it's kind of like if you were to think of, like, a farmer's market, but indoors, but, like, nicer, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's very much what it was. So I can see why you would be disturbed by it. Because if, like, slaves had been sold there frequently, it is kind of weird turning it into, like, a commercialism thing, right? But on this tour, we found out
that the land was donated to the city of Charleston, and one of the deeds and, like, conditions of it was that they could never sell a single slave at that market. So the reason why they called it the Charleston Slave Market is because that's where the slaves would go to sell goods and to buy goods. So like to do most of the shopping. So then it was, like, interesting to learn that, because I was like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. But it was great when we were down in Charleston, because it felt like there's been so much growth even since, like, the last time I was there, which was probably, like, 8 years ago, where they aren't trying to hide the history of slavery. They're not trying to, like, minimize it, that it felt very much like, hey, we need to be aware that racism is what this country is built on. And just be open about it. So that way we're not hiding, the majority of people's fucking history.
Oh, absolutely.
And even the tour we did in, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Because it is uncomfortable, right? But, like, honestly, I don't know, you can leave with so much more beautiful knowledge than you started with because we went to the plantation, right?
Yep, the Boone Plantation.
And I was originally like really, I don't know, I knew it could go one of two ways because I was really nervous to do it. Only because like the last time I did something like that where you would go out and like see the history of like what had happened. Last time I did something like that was actually in Germany, and I went to a like old concentration camp. And that was like really hard. You know, it was super difficult to like process. And there was just very heavy. And like it was just heavy. And so I was kind of worried that the Boone Plantation would be the same thing. But I still wanted to go and do it because it's important. And luckily it wasn't as heavy as a concentration camp.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same.
It's not quite the same at all. First of all, I didn't realize that plantations were gorgeous. Like, it's nuts. The property was fucking-sane. But B, we saw that Gola presentation, and that was the most beautiful thing that we could have ever taken away from that, or at least for me.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that, like, I would have never found out that, like, Gola was a thing unless I went to that Boone plantation. And now we're just, like, spiraling down the rabbit hole of what, like, Gullah culture is. And you found a really great podcast
I did.
on it, too.
I think it's Low Country Gullah is the podcast, and I'll put the link in the show notes because it is really good. Yeah. And just to let you know, it does get really heavy, but it is very, also very inspiring because I had to learn what seasoning camps were. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'll put the like link in the show notes, but I highly recommend it because it was phenomenal. It was things that like you had mentioned how you felt guilty because like you didn't know all this stuff, but they didn't teach it out here, which kind of makes sense because that culture didn't necessarily touch out here as much. But there was so much, even just listening to podcasts on the way to the airport, I like learned a lot of shit that I was not taught in school or that I was taught that was completely whitewashed. So it was like, oh yeah, that's not really a thing. And I was like, fucking shit.
Yes. And the plantation was a great experience too, also because it was so refreshing seeing the language be changed. Because we went into one of the like houses, and they have like TVs in there, and they're playing like this pre-recorded thing of just like the history, and then you can go into all these other houses and whatever. But
yeah, the slave quarters.
The slave quarters, yeah. And one of the first things that this like house had said in the pre-recording was that like, oh, they say America is a land of the free, but what they don't say is that this country was built on the backs of slaves. Yeah. And I was like, holy fuck, like I don't know, hearing that in the South too, especially with like my West Coast, like I guess, idea of what the South is like, because a lot of West Coasters, especially like on the internet or whatever, grew up assuming that like people in the South were just, you know, more racist, honestly, where like it was just painful and it was just like not a good place to be because it was all the southern states are like, you know, primarily like red states as well, which if you are a liberal and raised in the West Coast, like it's always like the worst thing that you could be, right? Which now as an adult, like I find that that's not true. All people are different people, but having that like actual representation and having it phrased that way, especially in the South, was so eye-opening because I was like, no, they know, like we're making a difference. Yeah, like, you know, the country is finally like owning up to it, which is great. And obviously we have a ways to go, but it was awesome seeing that in the South. We also went to our first all gendered bathroom. Yeah, in Charleston. Too.
It's at the Charleston Visitor Center.
Yeah, the Visitor Center.
Also, because you guys should be going to visitor centers. They're dope. They're like free fucking museums.
It's super cool. And then like there's so many things to do. And like if you don't know what to do, it's great. And
the people will gladly tell you all the things you could be doing. But that's how I found out about that tour. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, holy shit. It was fucking nuts. The all gendered bathroom in the South as well. Very cool. I haven't been to one of those in the West, which is interesting, right? I'm like, huh.
Yeah, and especially a public like restroom like that. I thought it was great.
I thought it was so cool. And like there was an employee outside of the bathroom being like, hey, we're just like testing this out. He was like trying to warn us, but we got in and I was like, oh, neat. Like, this is so cool. Yeah.
Nothing bad happened. It was just stalls that we all had our own private stalls and we just washed our hands next to each other.
And a girl, like, again, as a girl who was raised in the West, like basically like subconsciously being trained that everything in the South is like 50 years behind, I was like, wow, this is fucking crazy. This is great. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness. Not to mention everyone in the South is genuinely nicer. That Southern hospitality is a real thing.
It was really cute because she kept saying that, like, as she was like meeting my friends and like clients and such. She was like, everyone's just so nice. And she's like, I love the South. And everyone just kept looking at her like, what the fuck? I'm like, you guys take it for granted. You genuinely do.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to be able to just have like a nice conversation with someone and them not look at you like, what the fuck?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Guy is like from South Carolina. So how was that for you? Like now that you've been separated and been in the West Coast for 5 years and then going back, how was it?
I mean, obviously I wouldn't want to go and live there again, but I also just don't want to live in the States.
Yeah.
But it was really nice because it's the stuff that you don't always appreciate. And here's the thing. You're never going to appreciate the shit when you live there. Right. You just won't. Like, that's it. Like, you can make an effort to. I try to make an effort to appreciate the mountains every single day I see them and appreciate, like, the beauty that we have here. But I'm sure once I leave Reno, I'll be like, oh, man, I really liked that. Like, I appreciate Lake Tahoe. I appreciate the super crystal clear water.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got to see the river that we tubed in.
It's a little scary, not gonna lie.
But it was really nice because it was honestly just very validating on that struggle that I had when I came out here. And I was like, everyone's super rude. And like, I really struggled with clients when I came out. And then I just struggled with artists because I was used to that culture and like you got to meet several of my friends. You got to see that like playful banter that we have that then I came out here and the sense of humor is just vastly different. So you can't just like be shit talking people and that's deemed as like a fun thing here. It is a very, personally being an outsider, I would say very sensitive like area of the world to live that people tend to always assume the worst.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I 100%.
Yeah. Whereas like, yeah, in the South, it just doesn't feel like that. And obviously I'm saying the South definitely has its own problems.
Oh, for sure.
But even just in the 5 years I've been out here, it was awesome to see those like cultural differences.
Yeah.
But it was just really validating. And it really affirmed the fact, because I got into a place a couple months ago where I was like, fuck it, what if we just like, it's a whole thing to move and like we could just stay. And like I was thinking that and then going there and seeing all the greenery and I was like, no, I can't live in a desert.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just like all the plants here are dying out, I am slowly dying out. Like it's so depressing to me to be like the lack of greenery and the lack of trees and lack of flowers and the lack of like butterflies and just everything.
Yeah, it's I think every single time we leave Reno, like I get excited to see trees.
Yeah. Oh my God. Y'all. So for anyone who's been to the Charlotte airport, it was the cutest thing. We are driving out. We're just on a frontage road, just getting to the interstate. We're not even on the interstate yet. And we are driving along, and I think we got in at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun's still out. And she's just like fucking wide-eyed, like looking like, oh my gosh, the forest is so pretty. And for anyone that knows that area, like Charlotte's a fairly big city. It is not a fucking forest. It's maybe like 40 feet of woods and then there's like housing developments. But she's so not used to seeing trees. I was crying because I was like, the forest? These are woods, honey.
They're straight up woods.
These are just like woods to give people privacy from the road. This is not a forest.
Oh my God. I it's stuff like that where I'm like, yeah, you guys, the desert is hardcore.
Yeah.
And I think it is possible to be someone who is inspired by the desert, but I am not that person. Oh, yeah. And I don't think you are that person either.
I knew that the first time I ever went to Arizona.
Yeah.
I went out there for a tattoo convention. I was like, I could never live here. Like, just the 3 days there made me so sad. So the fact that I've survived 5 years here, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
It's honestly impressive. And I think, honestly, the only saving grace is that, yeah, the forest is technically only like 30 minutes north, which is great. So that's nice. It's a little sanctuary to do, but like obviously
the hard part about it is like when you have fire season, you can't go.
Oh,
when it's winter, you can't go.
Yeah,
like
fuck that. Well, that's the
you
thing.
never know when. For like a couple months out of the year.
For a couple months out of the year, and that's like your haven. But like you still really need to make an effort to go and do it. So this summer we are really, really pressed on like making an effort to really enjoy everything that like Tahoe has to offer, everything that like Donner has to offer.
Yeah, because this could be our last summer here.
It could be our last summer here, which I'm excited about. I really need to hop on a dating site. Hey, if any of you guys know of anybody in New Zealand who would like to get married, let me know. Hit me up.
Yeah, just saying.
Just saying, throwing that out there.
Or if you have tips for how to meet people in New Zealand.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hit her up.
I would love a symbiotic, like it could be completely like platonic relationship, but like, yeah, I need to get out there. But I don't know. It was, I think, culturally a shock for me, but in a good way. Thank God. It wasn't like a bad thing at all. It was super nice.
A little bit afraid to take you because I was like, what if she thinks that everyone's backwoods? And instead, every person, like all of my friends you met, all my clients, you were like, this is fucking amazing.
Yeah, they're like
you
real people. You
instantly became besties with fucking Toto and Mike, who's like constantly fucking slamming his face or his hand in your face.
Fucking face, just palmed face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really sweet. They're like very genuine, real people. And it was cool. Like, I don't know how open everyone is about their communication. Because like you said, I think I 1,000% agree that the West Coast is a more sensitive place to live. Mm-hmm. It's not like English humor either. Like people in England are very like dry and very like, that's how this is. Like if they don't think that it's right, they'll tell you, which I appreciate. I honestly love it. But in the West Coast, it's like, oh my God, you can never say anything bad about anything ever, which is, I don't know, kind of iconic considering that's like a lot of Asian culture, at least what I grew up in. It was very much like a hush hush. Like
we talked about that.
We did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that cultural difference between the West Coast being predominantly more Asian inspired. Yeah. So yeah, you should continue on that track.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating. I don't know how valid this is. These are just our hypotheses. If you are a professor and you know better, or if you know resources, hit us up.
Yeah, we love
very interested.
I think our hypothesis was, again, like, okay, so it's the culture out here is very much every man for himself, which makes sense because like you could trace it back to the gold rush. Like literally they were the earliest entrepreneurs, which means that you had to be competitive and you had to like really fend for yourself and really just look after you. And that's it. And then with that being said, like a lot of the Asian immigrants being, coming into the West. So we all know like San Francisco, like the Bay Area is just highly saturated with Asian people or Pacific Islanders. And how, okay, first of all, I was pretty much the only Filipino I saw in the South. I think I saw maybe one other Filipino woman.
The burlesque dancer, and she got so excited
and she also got excited to see me. So shout out, girl. We out here. Anyways, I think a lot of Asian cultures, especially like at least with how I was raised, it was very much like if you have a problem, you internalize it. Mm-hmm. You are not allowed to, I guess, be angry or say something or like even just like talk about an honest conversation about like, hey, this was wrong. Because it's very much like no, you have to pretend that everything is okay and that's where your worth is. So that's why, I mean, the shit-talking humor and stuff like that can be really jarring to people because it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. Like, that's considered rude. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's rude. I just think that, like, you're holding people accountable. I mean, if you go about it, like, with the concept in mind that, like, maybe if you don't want to be shit-talked, don't do shitty things to people. That would be cool.
Well, and I think, like, when we were at that Gullah experience, she talked about how, like, communication is so big because of all of, like, the enslaved people having to communicate amongst each other.
Yeah.
And that definitely, like, the way that she was speaking, like, very much resonated with me in that sense of, like, community. So she was like, yeah, if, say, someone brings, like, potato salad to, like, a family function, she talked about how important, like, gathering around meals was, which stems from that enslaved community being the only time that they could actually, like, connect with each other. And then if, like, someone brings potato salad, you, like, look and you're like, oh, who brought that? And they're like, oh, Mary Beth did. And you're like, Mary Beth cannot make potato salad, so I skip that thing.
Yeah.
And, like, it was so validating for me to, like, have you there for that, to be like, see, like, I'm used to that, where it's like, it's nothing against Mary Beth. You would still be like, hey, like, someone's going to pull her aside and be like, do you need help with that, hun? Like, can we help you? Like, make that better. Like, I think it just needs a little bit of salt. And it's not meant as, like, a demeaning thing, but it's meant to elevate the entire community. And it's the same thing with that accountability. Is that if you're a shit ass, like in the South, if you're a shit ass,
people will know.
Yeah, people will know because we are built in tons of small towns. Like you even pointed that out. Like it's just small town after small town. Mm-hmm. And so then, like if you drive like a fucking dick on the road, then I would just be like, dude, this like pickup truck cut me off earlier. And somebody would be like, oh, was that Callista? Let me talk to her mama. Mm-hmm. And so so it's not designed to like ostracize people. And obviously sometimes that does happen. Mm-hmm. And it's not designed to belittle people, but it's designed to protect the community from like a bad like seed, and B, to help. And that's like one of the things that I really struggled with. And like luckily our studio, like is the culture of our studio is shifting where we can like openly talk about things. Mm-hmm. Whereas at first, anytime I brought up like, hey, there's an issue with this, it was just like met with, oh, you're just creating problems. I'm like, no, we're supposed to talk about it, right? Because that's where I was raised of like, yeah, you just all talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then like, if Mary Beth doesn't want to fix her potato salad, that's fine. We just won't eat it. Like, simple. Sorry, boo. Like, we're not going to waste,
yeah,
good food, eating shitty food.
It's that open communication mm-hmm. and like knowing that like, I mean, sure, your feelings might get hurt, but also it's to benefit you. Like it's out of kindness that they're like, oh, do you need help with this dish? Yeah. No, I just, I'm very envious of that. But also, again, like I really can't see myself living anywhere in the United States. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Pacific Northwest, but I'd be really depressed. I get really bad seasonal depression. You know what I mean? Like in theory,
too cloudy.
It'd be great. Yeah. In theory, it would be great. But like in practice, I don't think I would be able to survive. But like circling back, yeah, I don't feel inspired by the desert at all. We get excited every time we see trees. I really get excited every time I see trees. Anything's a forest to me. Really anything.
Yeah, anything is a forest when you grew up in the desert.
Oh yeah, for sure. Everything's just barren. And again, like the culture here, like I don't mean to talk shit about the West, but it is hard, And like anybody who's lived in Reno for a long time can acknowledge that, like, yeah, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. Here because it is the biggest little city, like everyone knows each other, but like it's not in the same way that everyone knows each other in the South, where we're all like, even if like we don't like each other, we're still in it to protect the community. In the West, I personally feel, at least, like if you have beef with someone, like you just will never speak to them again.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
and
a very
it's like
harsh, hard thing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe it can trail back to, again, like just being out in the desert. I mean, people in Iceland say that like Icelandic people are hardcore because of the climate, mm-hmm. which makes sense because it's fucking brutal out there.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why they're straight to the point. They're cutthroat. They're very much like, this is how it is, and this
blunt.
Is very blunt people, and it makes sense, right? So it might be the same thing in the desert where it's just cutthroat, and it's the West. Mm-hmm. It's fucking cutthroat. But yeah, I had a great time in the South.
Yeah. What was your favorite part?
Definitely learning all the things that we did. Again, the Boone plantation is great. You should absolutely go. If you're finding yourself in South Carolina, you should go there and go to the Gullah exhibit because it's fucking amazing. Yeah. We learned so much. For those of you who don't know what Gullah is, because I didn't know, it is like a culture that was made up of all the slaves that came to South Carolina, or like, was it just the South in general?
Yeah, it's the South. It's Virginia it's the coastal mm-hmm. lands from Virginia down to Florida.
Yeah. And Gullah is basically the mix of all of those like tribes and cultures of the slaves that were together, because they came from different tribes and different places.
And different countries throughout Africa. Yeah. So they didn't speak the same language. Mm-hmm. So Gullah happened. It's Gullah Geechee because depending on like where you are, like if you're lower in Georgia. Mm-hmm. But it is how they created their own language in order to communicate. Yeah. So that way they could communicate amongst other enslaved individuals.
Mm-hmm. And it's fucking awesome. I don't know. I really don't have anything else to say. That's probably my favorite part. I mean, the Not Ghost tour was also my favorite part too.
We got learning about prostitutes.
Learning about prostitutes. We got to learn about a lot of what was it? The something hag?
Boo hags.
Boo hags. Yeah, boo hags, which I'm really excited to draw. I love any kind of like legend, any kind of like spooky ooky thing. So that was cool. But yeah, those are my favorite parts. That and meeting your friends. It makes sense why you guys are friends. Yeah, how about you?
Because you instantly got hit, you got sassy, and then just got shoved.
Yeah.
He's like, get her the fuck out of here.
So funny.
And then you got to meet Toto and just get engulfed in love.
Yeah, no, it was amazing.
And you got to meet Spider.
And I got to meet Spider. I'm obsessed with Spider.
Yeah.
I love him and his wife. They're the best.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's my favorite part. What about you?
Honestly, it's just like showing you like where it was. We got to go by like my old shop, and
that was nuts.
People can get insulted by this, but whatever. It was the funniest fucking comment. We were like peeping in the window because they've since moved. And so like that building has just like, it looks the same. I mean, obviously it's like not been kept up because no one's there anymore. It's just a vacant building. We were peeping in the windows, and then this bitch says, "Oh, so you always were a diamond in the rough." And I was just there like, what? You don't see how that's insulting as fuck? And she was like, yeah, that's just the nicest way I could put it. And I told like a couple other people, and they're like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
But they did defend that it was cute inside, but the outside of it, you know, we used to tell people on the phone, we were like, the outside of it looks horrible. We're so sorry. But the inside of it's like nice.
Yeah, sorry.
And so my clients, at least, like when I was tattooing, were like, but her booth was really cute.
It was quite literally the nicest way I could put it. I was all like, this is sketchy. This is like...
So it was great because I really thought that I would go back and be really like hit with like some sort of like regret over like leaving. And instead I was like, oh no, I made the right choice. Like I don't necessarily love Reno, and Reno is not a new school town. So I really struggle artistically here. And because of the like lack of inspiration without having greenery around, I also just draw a lot less here. Whereas like every time we go somewhere green, I'm like, I need to draw.
Yeah.
But so like besides those artistic sides, I'm super glad. Also, one last thing before we leave. If you were in Lexington, South Carolina, she's laughing because I've yelled at every person I've seen. The Lexington County Museum, y'all, it is phenomenal. I think it was 32 buildings.
It was a lot. Yeah, 30 something. It was a lot of buildings.
They have buildings that they've moved all from like the Midlands into this one property. It is massive. It is $5 for a tour. Make sure you bring cash or your checkbook. Because they don't take card. We learned that the hard way because she only had $100 bill.
No, I literally had $9 in ones.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, I only have $9. I have 100.
Which they were nice enough to like break for us.
Yeah, it was very nice.
But yeah, it is amazing. The Lexington County Museum, it's off of 378. It's so good. We basically had a private tour. So if you go in the afternoon, apparently school kids go in the morning, so go in the afternoon, and it is fucking dope.
Oh, it was super worth it. We learned that there was German, a lot of German heritage there, which was so random. Yep. I have never heard of that in my entire life. I was like, Germans?
Yeah, I did not know that either. So you will learn a lot. It's amazing. I don't remember our tour guide's name for that, but he was the shit. It was awesome. We learned about bed tightening. So the whole sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite comes from like those type of beds. And if you want to learn more, you need to go there.
Yes.
So go there. I will also put their website in our show notes because they're fucking awesome. And if you can't go there, you should just donate to them anyway because they're rad.
100%. And again, like I said, I think we really did the South correctly too, because not only did we have fun, but it felt like a history tour. Like Thank you.
That's how I like to do tours.
Absolutely.
Or do trips. I like to learn a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
No, it was great. I mean, the more you learn, and I know it sounds like, I don't know, maybe some people might find it corny and some people might not, but like the more you learn about a place, the more you'll be able to appreciate it.
Yes.
Because it was like that with Chicago. You go on the boat tour, and then all of a sudden all the buildings are so fucking beautiful to you.
Yep.
You just truly start to understand and appreciate everything that has happened and how far they've come. Again, I am shocked that they said that at the plantation. I was like, wow, that is awesome.
And they were talking about that in Lexington when he was giving us the tour. He was talking about how it's like a really low percentage of Southerners actually owned slaves, which is like, you know, that's where he mentioned like, look, people will argue and be like, well, I mean, only a small percentage of people actually owned slaves. And I say that in quotation because you can't own another fucking person.
Right.
But he said most of the people benefited from it because they would rent out slaves.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't afford one, you would rent out extra like hands for like when it came to like like planting or like anything to do with your farm, or if you needed like a cobbler, you would just go and like
a certain skill set. Like
yeah,
it was like
specific,
yeah, it was specific because like they had like reputations for being really good at like A, B, or C. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean? So
and so even though maybe not as many people owned another individual, they all benefited from it, and I loved that like we weren't hiding that part of Southern history anymore, but they were just openly talking about it and talking about how fucked up it is. And I like really appreciated that. So yeah, shout out to all the fucking awesome tours and museums that we got to see.
Yeah, it was great.
And then you went to Waffle House.
Oh, fuck yeah, I went to Waffle House.
That'll be our last bit of this episode. So you have to tell them about your Waffle House experience.
First of all, so before you guys get excited, we did go in the morning. We did not go at like midnight.
No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, we did not go drunk. We were sober.
No.
It was still delightful. It was great. It was cool because like again, the customers just like talk amongst themselves. Like we were just talking to random people. And although that might seem like an introvert's worst nightmare, it was very safe and it was very loving and it was very cool. Like I got stopped by this random guy on my way out of the Waffle House when I was done using the bathroom. And he was just like, he just held his hand out and then I looked and I was like, yes. And he's just like, can I see your tattoos? And I was just like showing him and he's just like, wow, you look really good with them. And that was it. I was like, and it felt safe. It did not feel creepy at all. It was just some dad eating dinner or breakfast with his family. But yeah, Waffle House was lit.
You got to do the jukebox because you learned
that Waffle House has songs.
Yeah.
They have like specialized songs, which I have never, the internet doesn't talk about that. They talk about how skillfully trained their employees are. But yeah, Waffle House has songs. I had a Waffle House waffle. And it was the perfect shitty waffle. It was delicious. And then, what was it? Their eggs and their hash browns with the jalapenos. So good. So yeah, went to Waffle House and now I can finally say I've been to Waffle House.
Awesome. And on that note, what is your win for the week?
I think my win for the week is being kind with myself as far as how crazy this month has been, and I'm surprisingly still somewhat on top of things.
Nice.
I feel like there's obviously I'm always behind with like reels, especially for Tattoo Homewreckers. My bad, y'all. But I think that like I've held it together pretty okay, whereas like me from a year ago would be stressed out of my mind. For context, we have been in a different place every single weekend for the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, it
has been intense and crazy and so much fun. But I'm ready for a break.
Yeah.
What is your win?
My win. Fuck. I didn't even think. I was like so engulfed with your win.
Oh, thank you.
My win is probably fuck, dude. I got like nothing.
That's okay. Now you know what it's like.
Oh my god! I'm
like,
usually
what is my win?
Like what? I'm like, there's so many, but I usually talk about like working out because I was stoked that I like worked out when we were in the hotel yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably just like being consistent. Oh, that was a good belly grumble. Yeah, being consistent in the gym and then also like not over analyzing because we have that competition coming up for the CrossFit competition and not over analyzing that because last night I had a lot of fun putting together all their past workouts so I could like see the themes.
You're crazy. That's awesome.
That's so much fun.
I'm so happy that you think that's fun because to me, I'm like, oh my God, I would get stressed out.
I went through and was like, hey, I need to know what workouts they do, what the expected weight is. And yeah, just like kind of going into that, not stressing about it, but just being like, dude, I just want to crush it for my own personal gain.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just being consistent because I worked out by myself while her and Chloe just hung out in the hotel room.
It was lit.
And I went down to the gym and worked out.
Yeah, I feel a lot better now that we're becoming more consistent, especially like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just been crazy. It's been a crazy winter. We've been dealing with a lot. But I'm happy because summer's around the corner, and honestly, summer is like the best time to be in Reno, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. So on that note, that is our travel episode on South Carolina.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, please DM us. I would love to hear them. Or any like suggestions as far as like why the West Coast culture is the way that it is.
I thought you were going to say the West Coast culture sucks.
I mean, if you agree or disagree with our analogies on West Coast culture.
Yeah.
Because love the West. You know, I've always had a soft spot for like anything Western, like fucking, I love Seattle. I love San Francisco. I love the Pacific Northwest. But And I actually kind of do enjoy some parts of South California. SoCal. But yeah, let us know if you agree or disagree.
Yep. Awesome. Right. We love you guys so much. Thank you, and we'll see you back next week.
See ya.
Bye.